Cryptic Humility.
Hello guys and welcome back to Cryptic Humility. My name is Vanessa Hurley. I am your host and guide. I am excited to be here as always. Today we are going to be talking about Cardano, the history of Cardano. We're going to be drawing a lot of similarities and differences from Ethereum and Solana to Cardano. What makes Cardano stand out against its competitors or against its brothers and sisters, if you will, in the crypto world? I wanted to talk to you guys and mention to you guys that the community garden for the nonprofit that I run is coming up in May, and I want to say thank you guys for watching the show first and foremost. I'm very grateful to the new followers and subscribers that we have on the show. I also want to say that for every single person that subscribes and watches the show, eventually, as we get more subscribers and followers and supporters, a good chunk of our proceeds, or a small chunk of our proceeds, is going to go to the nonprofit. So what we do is we run a community garden in Boxford, and all the produce that we grow gets donated to local food banks in need across the North Shore area of Massachusetts. We're hoping to expand that eventually, but I just wanted to say that as you guys are learning and we are walking this journey about fintech and crypto, also you guys are helping people who struggle with food insecurity in Massachusetts, which is a great purpose to stay watching the show and continue to support in every way as we try to change the world bit by bit. And also I have been incredibly busy. So if this podcast episode is a little scattered, I apologize in advance. I am in 2 weddings this year, and it's so funny being 25 years old as you're adulting and you're focusing on your career and you're trying to excel in your career and discover yourself in your adulthood. But at the same time, you're also young. So you're like trying to absorb the moment and stay present in the moment and go out and have fun, and like trying to find your identity in that can be incredibly interesting to say the least. And I am just trying to find a balance through all of it. I just went to one of my good friends' bridal showers this morning, and now, I'm recording tonight to get this episode out to you guys tomorrow. So very grateful for everybody who watches and appreciates the show. I want to be able to give back to people in need, so I hope that we can align in that purpose. And we're actually going to give some new examples today. We're going to go into some coding. So even if you've watched the last couple episodes and you're kind of like, I know Cardano is similar, stay tuned, because we're going to be comparing a lot of things and seeing which one is truly scalable, which one could truly surpass others. So we all know on the show that I butcher names, so we're not even going to go there, but I just wanted to say that Cardano originated in 2017, and it actually originated from one of the co-founders that created Ethereum. And within Ethereum and Bitcoin, which I left the co-founder's name. His name is Charles. I don't want to butcher his last name, but it's on the video for you to see. I want to say that Charles created Cardano because Bitcoin is brilliant, Ethereum is brilliant, but of course, as we've talked about in previous episodes, there are issues with Bitcoin and Ethereum. There's issues with their transactional speed, how many transactions they can have in its highest demand. And we're seeing that with even Solana and Cardano, there could be benefits. So what Charles, the co-founder of Ethereum, is trying to do is take the things that make Ethereum and Bitcoin brilliant and just try to capitalize on them. And we're going to see that today through the episode, what those things are. Cardano has had 6 different eras. It's had Byron, Shelley, Gojin, Basho, and Voltaire. I'm hoping I said all of those correctly. But we're going to be talking about them a little bit. I think I might just end up posting them in the video, descriptions of each of them. Some of them we will be talking about, but for the sake of convenience, because we do have a lot to talk about today, it will probably be on the video. So check that out. I probably posted it right now as we're talking. Awesome. So, Cardano does use proof of stake consensus mechanism. If you're new here, consensus mechanisms are the ways in which we verify transactions while remaining decentralized and while still remaining legit and verifying that these transactions are in fact legit. So, Cardano does use proof of stake, but it uses Ouroboros consensus mechanism. That is a tongue twister. Ouroboros consensus mechanism is proof of stake, but there are a lot of technological benefits to the advanced consensus mechanism. So, in our last episode, when we were talking with our first guest speaker, Christian, we were talking about that a lot of the Bitcoin schemes and the crypto scams and the pyramid schemes and all these things that we experience are because of Bitcoin mining and the ways in which we verify transactions. We're having issues in regards to safety and connection and protection on the blockchain. If 51% of the miners on the blockchain are malicious, meaning they don't have good intent on the blockchain, then they can start to fork the blockchain to form a different variation of it and confuse the honest participants, the honest Bitcoin miners, or the honest validators that are confirming transactions on the blockchain. So, who we put in charge to be a validator is the biggest issue. And in proof of stake, that what we're doing is, as you're investing more money and more time and more trust into the blockchain will reward you by staking your crypto, staking your ADA, for example, which is the native coin of Cardano, which we're going to be talking about today. But let's say in this example that if you stake your ADA, meaning that you're entrusting your crypto shares, what you've bought for that crypto coin, into the blockchain, then you can stake your reward, your crypto. And in staking it, you can earn cash back, you can earn native coin, depending on what blockchain that you're on. So the more that you have invested into the blockchain, the more the blockchain could deem you to be a validator. This is proof of stake consensus mechanism. It's used in Ethereum and it's used in Cardano, and I'm sure, yes, it's used in other blockchains as well. I'll list a couple other ones on the video for you. But validators are chosen at random depending on how much trust and how much investment they have into the blockchain. So, what's good about this is that Ouroboros is trying to create a more secure way of making sure that there is never going to be 51% of malicious people that are considered validators on the blockchain. And how they do that is they're now putting people through private tests and credentials in regards to putting a block out onto the blockchain and also verifying that block. So when you're a validator, your signature is needed. So they're doing all sorts of kinds of things to verify your signature more, to verify the credibility of validators and if they should be allowed to put out a block or if they should be allowed to do transactions. Basically, they're testing and doing more due diligence on honesty in the proof of stake validation process. And hopefully in doing that, there's going to be so much more security. So if and when there is a hack and there is a breach into the blockchain, the good participants are always going to be able to follow the longest train of transactions, and they're not going to be confused, or there's not going to be any hidden blockchain, any fork, any updated fake or fraud blockchain where these hackers can come in and validate transactions that are unjust, that aren't true. So we're going to be able to tell more now through Ouroboros, which is so hard to say, and I'm only going to say it one more time, but that in this blockchain method, in this verification method, in this consensus mechanism, there's going to be more due diligence on security, which has been a huge issue in Ethereum. It's been a huge issue in Bitcoin, especially with Bitcoin mining, which is so much energy use, and proof of stake consensus mechanism is not as much energy use. And also it's nice, like how we were talking about Solana last episode. Solana has clusters of validators. So it's so much easier to entrust who is validating, especially amongst validators, and it's easier to reach consensus because not saying groupthink, but in a good way, groupthink where everybody can come together and they understand which transactions need to be verified. So in Cardano, they are using proof of stake, but they're offering benefits within it. They're offering more security in regards to who we trust to manage the blockchain. And remember, it's decentralized, so it's power to the people, which I actually am in favor and I support. But the whole issue is the trust. Can we trust the community? Can we trust these validators? Can we trust people at random to ensure the legitimacy of transactions in the blockchain? Or do we need to stick to a traditional method of relying on a central organization? basically Cardano and just like Ethereum and Solana is offering more freedom to us, more of our own management. But can we be trusted? And Cardano is saying that even though there are issues within Bitcoin and Ethereum, Cardano is different and there can be more trust with proof of stake. This has actually been confirmed by peer-reviewed research. So again, I'm going to post what I had read into, and fair warning, it is a very deep dive. So if you love this kind of stuff and you really want to deep dive, I'm going to post some links at the bottom of this podcast episode for you to access. Of course, this is a class, so I would hope that you guys would go home, do your research, do your homework. If there's any questions, leave a comment below on Spotify and come back to me and I can guide you further. Okay, so now I want to talk about why Cardano. Yeah, if we have Solana and if we have Ethereum and if we have all these things, why would we use Cardano? So actually, on Cardano's website, which again I will tag below in the podcast episode, there were a ton of examples that I just read into that I'm going to talk to you guys about why Cardano may be a good case. And honestly, they're making some pretty good debates for this. So, number one is they've been saying that obviously, for example, I graduated from Bryant University and I have a physical degree, but if I ever lost my degree, then I would have to go directly to Bryant University to recover my degree or get my diploma again, which could be costly, which might have to pay great amounts for, and also still I'm only getting a physical form of it. So, the issues in that is, let's say that my employer wants my degree. They want to see my degree. They want to ensure that I went to Bryant University. Or if I I would hate to give you this example, but what if my house burned down and my degree went with it? What if I don't want to pay all this money again to receive my degree? So, what Cardano is trying to do is help you store your credentials easier. So, you could actually get a token or you could tokenize your physical form, whatever you have, whatever you want to store. Even this works for the government. If you have a government issued ID, for example, like, or if you are a government employee and you have specific paperwork, whatever it may be, this could also be a good thing for you. But you can store all your credentials on the blockchain. You can now securely share your documents so much easier than like taking a photo, sending it to yourself over email, saving it to your computer. Now you have access to those credentials easier. And what's so good about that is if you lost it, you don't have to rely on a central organization anymore. You don't have to rely on your university. What if so many years go by and your university doesn't even have that record anymore? And what do you do then? So Cardano is ensuring that even though they are decentralized, it is a network for you to store personal information in regards to diplomas, degrees, credentials, all that good stuff. And it's easier in the verification process, verifying that these forms are legit. So that tokenization process can do that for you and encrypt your data. So God forbid if anything were to happen, you have your credentials easier. So you guys know Michaela Niguera, or I think that's her last name. She actually went to Bryant University as well, and she was a couple years older than me, but she has this whole skin, like pre-makeup skin line that she just launched and stuff. And actually, I just saw one of her videos, and she was posting that somebody had taken her product and was posting it on eBay and was like selling it for triple the price. And there's obviously no guarantee that they even had the product, and if it, because actually her line just sold out. So there was a lot of sketchiness about what was going on eBay, and she was calling it out. The reason why I'm saying that is because Cardano supports that there is no counterfeit or counterfeit illegitimacy happening in the retail world. And what that means is that just like even on TikTok, some of these marketplaces on TikTok, do you know if they're legit or not? Do you know if they're counterfeit? Do you know if they're just trying to get you to pitch into a sale and then it's not actually legit or not? And just like what happened with Michaela in her pre-makeup skin line, Cardano is trying to ensure that proof of legitimacy in retail businesses would have to be shown before you can purchase. So, or even if a user, if we're doing person-to-person network transfers or payments or transactions, that person would have to be verified and legit basically before you can go and sell items. So Cardano is trying to beat out all of the like lack of legitimacy in the retail world, which we have experienced so much. Ironically, it comes from places you wouldn't expect. Like, you might expect like that skin Michaela whatever skincare line on eBay to be a joke, but it actually might be legit. It's usually the places that you're not expecting. For example, maybe your TikTok shop or just these trendy little boutiques on TikTok and stuff like that. If you're buying things in retail. So Cardano, just to steer us back on track, Cardano is trying to eliminate all of that fraud that's going on in retail. I think that is brilliant. The whole point of this podcast and the whole point of blockchain is to eliminate fraud. So it'd be really nice if they tried in some way, which they're attempting to, create fairness in products and make sure that this product belongs to this entity. And if you're going to purchase from this entity, it is verifiable. So that's another great thing that Cardano is trying to do. I'm going to keep listing out some more examples because it's honestly like people have asked me, Vanessa, like, how are we going to implement this into the real world? And I'm like, there are so many ways we need to implement this into the world. And the sooner we get started, the better. But another big one is nonprofits, which is interesting because we were just talking about my nonprofit, which honestly, I need to do more research in on this and kind of looking into it. But anyways, if you are a huge nonprofit and you're receiving donations from millionaires and people who have retired and they want to give their money away or whatever it may be, a lot of the donors can sometimes be suspicious about where their money is going. Now, I know this can be a double-edged sword because you could say, hey, if you're going to donate this money, then you're donating it willingly and you just need to accept that. You can't then control like where the money's going to go and stuff like that. I get that. But on the other end, there could be donors that are donating for a specific thing and want to make sure that their money is getting applied where it should. So what Cardano can do is it can track nonprofit donations. So if you donated to a nonprofit through the blockchain using ADA, the native coin, to transfer your funds or whatever it may be, you can then see on the other end where that money is going. So if that company or that block or excuse me, if that nonprofit is operating using blockchain or some form of blockchain for their donations, you can then track where your money is going to a certain extent, of course. But if you are a donor that's donating $1 million, for example, and you know, like this is the first time you're hearing about this nonprofit, you're a little iffy about it, you want to make sure it's legit, you can use Cardano, go on the blockchain, and depending on who you're working with, of course, and how you're donating, it is a possibility that you can track your donation and where your donation is going through there. So that also helps with any counterfeit or any illegitimacy in the market, depending on who you're working with. Here you are thinking that you're donating all this money to a lovely nonprofit, and it turns out it's an entire scam and scheme. And you never, you email that person, hey, like, how's that fundraiser going that I donated for? Like, and they never answer. That can be, that would be terrible. So blockchain is trying to ensure transparency even in nonprofits, which you would think would be the most transparent. So, of course, that's another great benefit to Cardano. One last really good benefit, which I'm sure can be on Ethereum as well, is that artists who, not speaking in regards to NFTs, but artists that have music, that have copyrights, that actually, Chapel Roan was just talking about this when she won her Grammy, but she was talking about how she got laid off from her producers or her label, and there was like some injustice in getting paid and all that sorts. Blockchain would actually support, if you were an artist creating music, that you have all your copyrights sorted out, you have all of your sound sorted out on the blockchain. It will be tokenized for you, so you have true ownership of those things. Obviously, you can sell your art and your music and your recordings on an NFT marketplace on Cardano if you truly wanted to. That's also another benefit. But it would ensure that record labels provide transparency in distribution of pay. So making sure that you know how much you're making off that huge hit of a song that you made or whatever it may be, and making sure that your record label, you see that amount and you understand where all that money is going. So it will allow transparency to artists who truly deserve to have a fair share of what they make, fair share of ownership of their items, and then the blockchain would come in to offer easy access to manage all of that. It would be completely transparent. You'd have a full record of your transactions or your history or your credentials like we talked about earlier. Everything would be supplied to you there. And again, you can absolutely do that on Ethereum's blockchain. I'm sure of it because of smart contracts and stuff. But Cardano offers a world of benefits just like this. As we're going into Cardano's transaction speed and we're looking at transaction speed, how much can Cardano transact in a second and how much in its highest demand? So how long does it take to confirm a transaction? On the screen, I'm going to be putting in Bitcoin, Ethereum, Cardano, Solana, and Ripple, because those are the ones that we went over and have gone over so far. And Cardano is pretty much, if I'm not mistaken, in the middle. Obviously, I'm going to have to, I got to look at the numbers, but here I have written that its transaction speed is 1,000 TPS, so 1,000 transactions per second, and around 20 seconds to confirm. When we were talking about Ripple, I believe that Ripple was 1,500 TPS, and it took 3 to 5 seconds to confirm. And Solana is even faster than that. Solana at this very moment has a transaction per second of 2,000 and can verify a single block in 0.4 of a second. So Cardano, and then we're not even going to get into Bitcoin and Ethereum because they can't even transact over 100 transactions per minute or honestly per couple minutes. So Cardano is directly in the middle so far in our research on cryptic humility and what we've been talking about, which is not bad. I mean, Cardano is not like Solana, in my opinion, is more known for payment processing. Last episode, we were talking about Visa and how Visa is looking into Solana because eventually Solana wants to scale to 800,000 transactions per second, which is amazing news to Visa, who's trying to capitalize on being able to process payments faster. So Cardano is not necessarily so focused on payment processing, not to say you can't do it. It's more focused like Ethereum, in my opinion, towards DeFi, NFTs, dApps, more scalability to more of a network, if you will, of creations instead of maybe payment processing per se. So Cardano is relatively in the middle, which I think is pretty good. And I think that their proof of stake consensus mechanism, it could be a lot more secure than what it is on Ether or Ripple, for example, and what Ripple is using. So there are a lot of benefits there. All right, since we're doing a lot of review over and over again, kind of similar topics, I wanted to take a moment to talk about something new here, and that would be the coding and the program language that kind of goes into these different kinds of blockchains. Now, I want to preface that I am not a pro on coding or programming or any of that stuff. I took a finance kind of like coding class in college and it was extremely difficult. It's obviously not for everybody, but I want to explain it to you guys in simple terms. So, Ethereum uses Solidity, which is the smart contract creating program, if you will, that allows smart contracts to be created on Ethereum's blockchain. Compared to Cardano, where Cardano uses Plutus, and Plutus is the way in which Cardano writes smart contracts and allows smart contracts to form on its blockchain. So in my research looking into this, basically looking into a lot of coders and programmers' feedback, they said Solidity is a lot easier if you want it to be simple and you want to be able to scale largely, because Plutus was only created for Cardano and Cardano programming only, which there is a benefit here if you use Plutus, which Plutus is backed by Haskell, which is the system programming, so the actual coding and programming that goes into Plutus. And so there are a lot of things to say here. First of all, the advantage about Plutus is that it's seamless on Cardano because it was specifically created for Cardano. The only thing is that listening and hearing into a lot of different programmers and their experience is that Haskell is a little bit different to use. It's a little bit harder to use compared to Solidity, where Solidity is built off of similar programming to Python, I believe. Python, or I'm sorry, JavaScript. JavaScript. So Solidity is a little bit easier to use if you're familiar with JavaScript. And then Plutus is going to be a little more complicated if you're not familiar with Haskell and how Haskell programming language works. So just to recap, Cardano uses Plutus, which is Haskell programming language that helps create the smart contracts, the AI functions that are preset protocols that operate on a systematic command, if you will, on a preset command. And Solidity is used for like Avalanche, BNB chain, Polygon. That's where I got confused. I just realized at the time and that this episode is coming to an end very soon. So instead of going over current news today, I think what we're going to do is we're going to go over ADA and we're going to talk about the staking, and because I think that's the most important thing for this episode. And then we can talk about the current news that I have in mind next week. But to recap on everything I just said, I'm going to put in the video the differences between Plutus and Solidity. And if you're interested, you can see the pros and cons of both of them to kind of understand how Cardano is programmed. And if you are a programmer yourself and you wanted to be involved in that, what would be the steps of you getting involved in that? And again, in the video at the bottom, I'll post a ton of links for you guys to check that out a little bit further and do your homework. And if you have any questions, of course, you can ask. Also, before we get into the stats, I want to talk about the total supply between Cardano, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solana, and similarities and differences between them. Cardano and Bitcoin both have set capped supply, which means that they only have a set amount of ADA or Bitcoin that can get sent out into the world at all. Compared to Ethereum and Solana, I know Ethereum has 18 million that can get sent out every single year. Solana is uncapped, and they have kind of an unlimited supply as well. So in my opinion, Ethereum and Solana could be so much more of digital cash because in a way, if you think about it, we're kind of printing money every single year, or have the ability to print more crypto, more native coin every single year to use, compared to Bitcoin, which is going to be more like digital gold, and Cardano, in a way, not saying it would become digital gold as well, but it has that cap, so there's not an unlimited supply of ADA that could be distributed every single year. All right, let's get into the stats. As you know, I'm pulling up Coinbase like we do every single week. If you're new here, every single week, I trade on Coinbase. I encourage you guys to use whatever platform you're comfortable with. Obviously, Coinbase, I think, is very trusted. And what I do is I just search up Cardano, and we're going to read into the stats together. And as specifically, in this time around, we're going to be talking about the staking benefits. We're going to be talking about the staking benefits between Ethereum, Solana, and Cardano, and really which one has the best staking benefits. So in regards to the stats, and you guys will see this on the screen too, so it has a market cap of 20.5 billion, a volume of 822.9 million, a circulating supply of 35.3 billion. And I believe with Cardano, their cap for supply is 45 billion. So that's right now they're at 78% of the total supply. So that means there's only about 20% more of the total supply that could be mined, if you will. Obviously, they're not doing mining, but in regards to staking, so there's only 20% more on Cardano's blockchain that could be staked, so there's only a certain level of coins that are left. Obviously, you can still trade them. Even after they are all discovered, you could still trade them, but in regards to the ownership aspect, now is your opportunity to jump into it with 20% still out there to be discovered. Its all-time high was September of 2021, and its highest price was $3.10. And looking into it right now, it's currently at 58 cents, which is not bad. We've seen XRP appreciate immensely this year, and we can absolutely see Cardano do the same. But it almost had basically a 1% decrease in the last year. So it's been pretty consistent, I would say, but its all-time high was in September of 2021. Okay, talking about the staking rewards. So for Cardano, if you stake, so proof of stake, like we were talking about, if you stake your crypto and you become a validator, for example, or even if you're not a validator, if you stake your coin, you can earn cash back. And on Cardano, it's 1.7 annual percentage yield. So 1.7 cash back that you could get depending on what you deposit into the Cardano blockchain. Compared to Solana is 5.12% annual percentage yield, which is super high. We were talking about in the last episode that even if you had a significant amount of money and you were at the bank and you wanted to open a certificate of deposit or even a money market account, you might not be able to get that high of a percentage for cash back or a percentage back of your earnings, or interest back, if you will. So Solana is pretty good. And we were looking into Ethereum too, and Ethereum is only 1.99 APY. So Solana, in regards to staking, is at the highest. And the Solana blockchain also has that benefit of being able to process things faster. And in regards to Cardano and Ethereum, Ethereum's benefit is that it has first movers advantage. It's been here before Cardano for a little bit, only like I think 2 years longer than Cardano, and it has more of an opportunity to scale. It has more potential for people to get involved in its programming and its smart contract programming because it's so similar to other programming that people might be more familiar with. Here's what I would say. I would say that in regards to payment processing, Solana is the best. In regards to staking, I think Solana is the best because it offers the highest percentage. In regards to dApps, I think that Ethereum would be the best because it's been scaling for a longer period of time. There's so many dApps on Ethereum's blockchain. There's just so much to do on Ethereum's blockchain. In regards to doing transactions, though, or like lending, borrowing, crypto, stake pools, and all that stuff, Cardano might be the best bet because they're pretty good at payment processing. They're they're about average in regards to their transactions per second and how fast their transactions get processed. But also, they offer more security. So if you're going to be transacting on a blockchain, wouldn't you want the one that has the most malicious ridden what is the word, like the most secure way to verify transactions while remaining decentralized? I think Cardano wins in that aspect. And also, they're a little bit faster than Ethereum while offering all the benefits and the dApps and the NFT marketplaces and the same things that Ethereum offers. And I'm sure the co-founder of Ethereum is not going to be upset whether you use Ethereum or Cardano, but I think Cardano is better for payment, for transfers and exchanging in those aspects. So is Solana. But I think if you're comparing it to Ethereum, Ethereum is just the best for all the dApps that are out there and all the programs that you could utilize because it has first movers advantage. But Cardano is coming up behind it to solve a lot of the issues, like in transactional speeds and security and hacking and all the things we stand for on this podcast. Cardano could be trying to solve those things. And of course, we went over a ton of examples earlier in this podcast episode. But yeah, this is the debrief of Cardano. Very, very lightly, very generally. I know we can dive deeper into it, and I would love to. We should definitely talk about some dApps that are on there and Cardano's goal. But basically, Cardano's goal is to be the #1 environmentally friendly crypto, or even just blockchain in general, with DeFi and dApps and all these other things outside of crypto. It's trying to become the most profitable while also being the most friendly environmentally on the crypto world and blockchain world is Cardano. It's trying to fix all the bugs and issues in Bitcoin and Ethereum and become potentially one of the biggest blockchains, which it already is, but trying to surpass Bitcoin and in all those little fundamental errors that happen through it. Thank you guys so much for bearing with me and staying with me through this podcast episode. I am sure you probably have a ton of questions, and I know we only touched the tip of the iceberg. If you do have a question, please write it below in Spotify or on YouTube. You can also write us on Twitter, X, whatever you guys are most comfortable with. I will be there for you. And of course, we post all the video on social media as well. So if you want to contact us there, you can. Thank you guys so much for watching. Next week, we will get a little bit further into investigating other blockchains and their similarities and differences. My name is Vanessa Hurley. This is Cryptic Humility, and I hope you guys have an amazing week. Thank you.